Before we get into this, I would just like to say that I was given a review copy of this game to review for you guys, and so take everything that I say with a grain of salt, and let's get right into this. Welcome back, I'm Ren from Blue Gaming, and today I'm taking a look at Fictorum. This is the game that lets you be that ever so powerful wizard that you've always wanted to be. And with a name like Raiden, I had to start throwing lightning bolts around the place. So let's get right into this review. So starting off with the graphics, this game doesn't have amazing, highly detailed graphics. What you are seeing is this game in high quality, or the highest settings that you can really put it, and just by looking at it, it doesn't look all that great, but then you realize that it's also rendering a whole bunch of destructible environments and doing all the particle effects and all the different effects around all these spells. And for this dev team of what turned out to be, I think 2 people made this game, or the parts that you're really seeing 2 people worked on, and this is pretty decent for just 2 people working on it. And while at first I thought that this was pretty below average looking game, after I started destroying 6 to 10 buildings kind of near each other, and the frame rate didn't tank all over the place, I kind of understood why this game looks the way that it does. So let's move on to the next category. And that category happens to be sound. Now, as you're hearing behind my voice, the clearest thing that you were going to hear is the spells being cast. With behind that, you're going to hear maybe the yelling of the enemies, and then behind that, the music that is pretty much always playing. I think that the layering that they do is really, really great. With the spells always being the biggest thing that you will hear, they kind of drown everything out. When I shoot off a lightning bolt, I know that I am shooting off a lightning bolt. When I throw a fireball, I know that I am throwing a fireball. It just sounds great. And really, when it drowns everything out, it just kind of makes them feel a bit more powerful, which, as you're seeing, I'm melting people with a single lightning bolt, and I'm destroying whole buildings with a single lightning bolt, and just all the different little subtle things make this feel even more powerful, like having every other sound be quieter than the spell that I'm currently casting. And it's great things like that even with even when you take each individual sound, it might be slightly lower quality than a huge AAA game. When you add it all together like this, it really becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Now let's move on to story and progression. Now, this game has a story that you can really just gloss over if you want to, or you can read a whole bunch about if you want to. I personally kind of skipped over a bit of it because I just wanted to throw lightning bolts over and over and over again. But it really does have a lot that you can read about it in between missions, and there's really quite a bit there for the 2 people making this game, and that's actually really, really great to see. Now, the progression in this game, you don't just go from one mission to the next. There's actually a progression kind of like FTL, Fast and Light, where you are on one node on a map. You know where the exit point of this map is, and you get to choose your own path of how you go from node to node on this journey to the end point of this map. Then once you get to the end point, you will go to the next chapter, and you get to do that again. Now, I don't know if these are randomly generated, but this isn't set up in the same way as FTL is, where you're designed to die. You're not in this game. You actually are given plenty of chances to retry if you fail something, and it feels kind of like you should be dying more, but this game isn't set up like that, and I don't know how many chapters it goes on to. I'm currently most of the way through chapter 4. Now, looking into it a bit more, it looks like this is a game where you really are meant to beat it several times, as the maps are actually randomly generated and the loot that you will find in them is randomly generated. But you're not meant to really die in the middle of the journey. You're meant to play through it like normal, beat it, and then go again, getting different things, unlocking different titles, which will give you different starting loot, which you can go and try to get other titles. So overall, there's a bunch of replayability in this, and there is a pretty decent amount of progression to go through and get all of the different things that you can. So now let's move on to talking a bit more about the gameplay, and what you see is kind of what you get. You can get 4 different spells that you can then change by adding 3 different runes, and if you right click, you can adjust how much each rune affects it. So for my lightning bolt, I have a chain rune added onto it, and a piercing rune, and concentration. Concentration just makes it more powerful. The chain rune makes it chain from enemy to enemy, and the pierce makes it go through enemies. So I can choose how much piercing I want it to have, how much chaining I want it to have, how much concentration I want to put into the spell, and adding these things makes it cost more mana. And you would think, oh, what's the point of, why not just make it as big all the time? Well, your mana does have to regenerate, and if you're channeling a spell for too long, trying to craft it the right way, you can actually, if you run out of mana, it will start taking from your pool of health, which your health does not respawn. You have to get to a merchant and spend these essences that you get by destroying buildings and such. You have to use these essences to actually refill your health. So channeling a spell for too long can actually be quite a dangerous thing. So that is one of the ways that you can really have to watch out. Another thing that you don't actually affect you inside of a mission, but outside of missions, you can actually change what you were wearing, and your items can give you different effects. Like the robe that I'm wearing can deflect a projectile, and then has to go into a 30-second cooldown, and then can deflect another projectile. There's other items in the game that give you huge abilities, like one of them lets you fly, which the developer stated that is the most overpowered item in the game, as most enemies that you fight against are not really capable of fighting against someone that can fly. And that is pretty much it for gameplay. So let's move on to my final thoughts. Now, actually, before I move on to final thoughts, I do want to talk about the kind of weird bit of marketing that they did for this game. So I've actually been seeing this game almost since they started making it, because the way that they showed this off was almost exclusively on Imgur, and I've seen multiple games take this route since Fictorum did it, but Fictorum's really the first that I saw do this, where they didn't really, it was all just word of mouth and using Imgur to show off different things that the game could do, and it's worked quite well for them. I checked the other day, and there was 200 and some active, current players on it, which is quite a bit for an indie game that was really just word-of-mouth marketing. And I've seen other games take this approach, and it's worked to varying degrees, but this is really shows a new way of how indie developers can show off their game to a wider audience without having to spend a whole bunch of money on marketing. And that is quite great that we can actually show that off and do things like that. I know other games have shown off on places like Reddit and such, and this might be the new way to market an indie game, is to show it on these platforms like Reddit and Imgur and such. So let's move on to my final thoughts and whether you should buy this or not. Now, personally, I am having a whole ton of fun like this. The only other game that has made me nearly as powerful as I am in this game is heavily modded Skyrim. Kind of gives you the same effect of being a super powerful wizard, but no other game really has that really powerful wizard mixed in with a huge destruction engine like this game does. And really, I'm having a ton of fun just throwing around lightning bolts, making giant walls of flame, shooting out balls of lightning, frost spells, flying around the place. This game is just a ton of fun. Now while saying that, this game is not really in a place where I would say go out and buy it immediately. As it stands, there's still just a few things that aren't exactly polished with this game. I know the developers are working on letting people mod the game and adding in modding tools and such. Once they add in the ability to mod the game, then I would say that it is worth the asking price of $20. But until that point, I would say wait until a sale where it goes down to about $15 or so. But once they get modding into the game, then it is definitely worth the asking price of $20. So that is going to be it for this. Remember, I'm Riding from Blue Gaming, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.